Licensed games don't exactly have the greatest reputation. For years they were seen as quick cash grabs, rushed out to coincide with a movie release before being forgotten a few months later. Thankfully, that's started to change over the last decade, with games like the Batman Arkham Asylum series, Alien Isolation, and the recent Indiana Jones proving that licensed games can actually be fantastic when the developers understand the source material. Then in 2023 came RoboCop Rogue City. Developed by Teon, a relatively small AA studio, expectations were exactly sky high, but after a release something surprising happened. Fans of RoboCop absolutely loved it, with many calling it the best RoboCop game ever made. Now, I'll admit straight away, I'm not the biggest RoboCop fan in the world. I've only watched a couple of the films, but I'm certainly not someone who knows every bit of lore. So I want to approach this game from two perspectives. Firstly, does it work as a RoboCop game? And secondly, is it simply a good first-person shooter regardless of the license, and something that maybe you should try out? Well, after finishing the campaign in around 10 hours, here's what I thought. So kicking off with the story, well, one thing that immediately surprised me was just how much effort had gone into the story. Rather than acting as a reboot or retelling of the original films, RoboCop Rogue City slots directly into the existing timeline, taking place somewhere between RoboCop 2 and RoboCop 3. You once again play as Alex Murphy, the Detroit police officer brutally murdered before being rebuilt as RoboCop by Omni Consumer Products, or OCP. Now, not much has changed. Detroit is still falling apart, crime is everywhere, street gangs continue to terrorise civilians while OCP pushes forward with its own corporate agenda, caring far more about profit than the people it's supposed to be protecting. As RoboCop, you're sent to investigate a new drug epidemic sweeping through old Detroit. What starts off as a routine police work gradually uncovers a much larger conspiracy involving mercenaries, corrupt officials, and figures from RoboCop's past. Without spoiling too much, the story does a really good job of mixing detective work with classic action sequences. There are plenty of shootouts, but there are also long sections where you're simply talking to civilians, investigating crime scenes, or just making moral decisions. That slower pacing won't be for everyone. There's actually a fair amount of dialogue throughout the game, and I can definitely imagine some people repeatedly pressing the skip button because they just want to get back into the action. Personally though, I actually really enjoyed it. It helped flesh out the world and made old Detroit feel like a real place rather than just a shooting gallery. What impressed me even more was how faithful it seems to be to the films. The game doesn't simply reference the original RoboCop movie and ignore everything else, it actually acknowledges the events of RoboCop 2, incorporating them into the story despite that film being more divisive amongst fans. I genuinely appreciate that. It shows developers weren't afraid to embrace the entire franchise rather than only the popular parts. Even as someone who isn't a massive RoboCop fan, I thought the story was surprisingly engaging. So looking at the graphics, well, considering this is a AA game rather than a massive AAA blockbuster, this thing looks incredible. Seriously, the environments are just packed with detail. Downtown Detroit is probably the biggest standout. Walking through the streets, seeing puddles reflecting all the neon lights. I've honestly never seen a game where puddles look so damn good. Even without ray tracing on, this thing looks incredible. I mean, damaged buildings are just everywhere and people simply trying to survive gives the city a believable atmosphere. It's gritty, it's dirty, and it's exactly how you'd imagine RoboCop's Detroit should look. Visual effects are also excellent too. Gunfire feels powerful, explosions have plenty of impact, particle effects during firefights look fantastic. Now there are a few weaker areas. Facial animations aren't quite on the same level as something like Cyberpunk or maybe even like The Last of Us. You can definitely tell this wasn't made with a like £150 million budget, but honestly, it never really bothered me. Considering the size of the studio, they've done an absolute incredible job with this game and making it look pretty damn good. Now, moving on to the gameplay, well look, this is where Rogue City really surprised me. On paper, it's a fairly straightforward first-person shooter, but the developers have done loads of little things to make it actually feel like you're playing as RoboCop rather than just any other FPS character. Obviously, you've got the RoboCop's iconic Auto 9 pistol, and it quickly becomes your favourite weapon throughout the game. The gun feels incredibly satisfying to use, every shot has weight behind it, enemies react dramatically when you shoot at them, it generally feels powerful. Then there are the little RoboCop touches, his visor hood constantly scans the environment. His robotic movement gives him a sense of weight. Instead of sprinting around maps like Call of Duty, you're slowly marching forwards while bullets are bouncing off you harmlessly and you're just flying your way towards the enemy. It completely changes how firefights feel. You honestly feel like this indestructible tank that you should feel like. It feels fantastic to just be this absolute machine powering through these firefights and just taking everyone down in your way. The game also encourages creativity. You aren't just shooting enemies, you can grab explosive barrels or even laptop screens and throw them at people. Rip objects out of the environment, throw enemies through walls, even bounce bullets off certain wall panels to ricochet shots into enemies hiding behind cover. Those little things and those little mechanics stop the combat becoming repetitive quite as quickly. And whenever conversations begin, the camera switches into third person. It's a small detail, but actually seeing RoboCop standing there while you're talking really helps immerse you into the character. There's also some really good customization in this game, whether that's within the weapon or RoboCop himself. So although you're going to spend most of your game just using the Auto 9, there are quite a few other weapons scattered around through levels that you can use. A couple of different shotguns, some SMGs to play around with, a couple of assault rifles, only I think one sniper rifle with 2 variants of it, and a couple of heavy weapons that you can rip out and start using. There's enough variety here to keep firefights interesting. The standout feature though is definitely the Auto 9 upgrade system. Like I mentioned before, it's got an fantastic upgrade path that you can play around with. Rather than simply increasing damage numbers, you can actually unlock upgrade boards that completely transform how the pistol behaves. It feels rewarding, slowly improving your signature weapon throughout the game. Alongside that, you've also got proper experience system, completing missions, helping civilians, searching for hidden contraband and finishing side quests. Well, it all contributes towards earning experience points. These points unlock perks that improve RoboCop in meaningful ways. I didn't manage to unlock absolutely everything during my playthrough, but I have the feeling that the gameplay will become even more enjoyable with a fully upgraded RoboCop. The upgrades that I managed to do were enough to actually make a massive impact in the gameplay and how I played it. There's some really good choices there to play around with, and like I say, that Auto 9 system is incredible. You can get these upgrade points to increase damage markers, or if heads explode. It's honestly, there's so much variety out there. It's a really good system. Now, one feature I wasn't expecting was the amount of player choice. Throughout the game, you're regularly asked how RoboCop should respond to situations. Do you strictly enforce the law, or do you show some compassion and serve the public trust? These decisions actually affect conversations, character relationships, and certainly story outcomes. It's not quite Mass Effect levels of choice, but there's definitely enough here to encourage another playthrough just to see different outcomes at the end. It's another feature that adds just more depth than what I was expecting. And another thing with depth was the side missions, and to be honest, they're a bit mixed. Some are genuinely worthwhile, that they expand characters and develop the world, and reward you with experience and upgrades. Others though, well, they feel slightly unnecessary. One mission that specifically sticks out in my mind has you walking around getting everyone to sign Lewis's Get Well card. It's not awful, but honestly, compared to the investigating murders and fighting crimes, it feels a very strange, change of pace. It just felt really off and really pointless, to be honest. There are definitely moments where the game slows down more than it probably needed to, and this is definitely one of those cases. Apart from that though, to be honest, most of the side missions are pretty damn good. There's only really that one that properly stands out in my head, and to be honest, it's any game that is within the precinct, to be honest. Now, I mentioned it at the start, but my playthrough lasted around 10 hours, which I actually thought was pretty good length. It never felt massively padded. There were enough optional objectives and side content to keep you busy without dragging things out, and performance was genuinely goddamn solid too. I didn't run into anything game breaking during my time with it, and most of the time I was running some pretty decently high FPS, probably sitting around 70 to 90, bearing in mind I was playing this game on absolute max settings, and yeah, it ran pretty damn smooth. And as for another thing that's pretty damn smooth, it's the reviews. So when RoboCop City launched in 2023, expectations, again, like I say, were fairly modest. Instead, it became one of the biggest surprise hits of that year. Critics genuinely praised how faithfully it recreated the films, while fans loved the fact that the developers clearly understood what makes RoboCop special. Its Steam reviews currently sit at very positive, with most players praising the atmosphere, story and feeling of the actually becoming RoboCop. It's another example how small AA studios can sometimes understand a license better than a massive AAA publisher. And I've got to say, with very positive, well, I agree with it. I've fully enjoyed my time within this game, and yeah, I can't complain really. Although if I do have to look at some of the negatives in the game, well, look, there definitely aren't loads, but there are just a few that are worth mentioning. The gameplay can become slightly repetitive just after you hit that several hour mark. Like I say, that 10 hours is pretty much perfect for it. For me, I couldn't go back and replay it. There is replayability there, but I just don't think that most people, unless you're a hardcore RoboCop fan, will want to go back and play this again and again. The gameplay as well, most encounters boil down to the same situation of entering an area, eliminating enemies and moving on to the next objective. Thankfully, the upgrades and environmental interactions and the variety to weapons can stop it becoming too repetitive, but, you know, again, you're probably not going to play this multiple times unless you're a hardcore fan. And like I say, some side missions feel a little bit like filler, so, you know, not bad, just a couple of necessary ones. And, well, finally, if you're interested in, well, story-heavy games, some of the dialogue sections feel just slightly too slow. It's not as good as something like an Elder Scrolls game, and especially when if you do want to skip through, you can't just kind of quickly sprint through the kind of subtitle sections. You mainly have to listen to it all to fully appreciate and understand it. But look, my final verdict, well, RoboCop Rogue City was one of the biggest surprises I've played in quite a while. I went into it expecting a decent licensed shooter, and what I got was genuinely an enjoyable first-person action game that completely understands the source material. The graphics are far better than what I expected for the kind of studio it was coming out of. The Auto 9 is one of the most satisfying weapons I've used in any FPS game for a long time. The upgrade system is rewarding and choice mechanics add replayability. And perhaps most importantly, it actually makes you feel like you are RoboCop. Even as someone who isn't a massive fan, like I say, I came around and was really impressed with this. I picked this game up for about £5 in the sale, and at that price this game is an absolute bargain. Even at a higher price, well, I'd still pretty much recommend it, but you can pick it up most places now for a really decent discounted price. Like I say, it's not the perfect game. Combat becomes, you know, slightly repetitive, but ultimately there's very few complaints with this. And for me, it proves that, you know, you don't need a massive budget to create a fantastic game. You just need developers who generally care about what they're making. If you're a RoboCop fan, well, look, this is an absolute easy recommendation. And if you're not, like me, well, I still think you'll have a pretty goddamn good time at playing this game. And also, if you're an achievement hunter, well, this is one of those that you can complete and 100% with relative ease. So, yeah, it's one of those 100% games where you can easily tick off if you're into that. Now, if you've enjoyed this, please feel free to give it a like and drop a subscribe for more videos like this. And I'll catch you in the next one.